The most agreeable person in the room is often the one who feels the most disconnected from everyone else. This might sound like a contradiction. We are taught that being nice, accommodating, and easygoing is the surest path to connection and love. We assume that if we minimize our needs and prioritize the comfort of others, we will be rewarded with loyalty and belonging. Yet, for many people, this relentless pleasantness is not an open invitation for intimacy. It is a shield. It is a sophisticated, learned behavior designed to keep potential conflict at bay. If you often feel invisible, despite being helpful, or if you feel a simmering resentment beneath your smile, you might not just be too nice. You might be utilizing a survival strategy known as the fawn response. To understand why this happens, we have to look beyond the surface level of personality traits. We often categorize people as simply shy, extroverted, or generous. However, psychology offers a different lens through which to view excessive agreeableness. It asks a fundamental question about the motivation behind the behavior. Is your kindness genuine and overflowing from a place of safety, or is it a transaction driven by fear? For those operating with a fawn response, kindness is often a safety tax. It is the price paid to ensure that the emotional climate remains stable. This is not a character flaw. It is a highly adaptive mechanism that likely served you very well in the past, even if it is costing you your sense of self in the present. You are likely familiar with the concept of the fight or flight response. These are the body's primal reactions to danger. When faced with a threat, the nervous system mobilizes energy to either combat the danger or escape from it. There is also the freeze response, where the system shuts down to play dead. But there is a fourth response that is less commonly discussed, yet it is pervasive in the realm of complex relational dynamics. This is the fawn response. Fawning is the act of merging with the needs, wishes, and demands of others to diffuse a threat. Instead of fighting the aggressor or running away, the fawner tries to appease them. It is an attempt to become so useful, so accommodating, and so unthreatening that the other person has no reason to attack or reject you. This response often develops in environments where standing up for oneself or leaving were not viable options. If a child grows up with a volatile caregiver, fighting back is dangerous and running away is impossible. The only remaining option is to become exactly what the caregiver needs in that moment. You learn to read micro-expressions. You learn to anticipate needs before they are spoken. You learn that your safety depends entirely on your ability to manage the emotions of the people around you. Over time, this creates a wiring in the brain where your own needs are flagged as dangerous distractions, while the needs of others are flagged as urgent survival imperatives. One of the most difficult aspects of this dynamic is the confusion it creates in adulthood. On the surface, fawning looks like virtue. It looks like being a good partner, a reliable employee, or a devoted friend. Society reinforces this. We are praised for being selfless. We are complimented for being low maintenance. Because of this external validation, it is very hard to recognize that this behavior is actually a trauma response. You might believe you are just an empath or a natural giver. While you may possess those qualities, the distinction lies in the ability to choose. A healthy giver can say yes, but they can also say no. A fawner feels that saying no is physically unsafe. The body reacts to the prospect of setting a boundary with the same chemical cascade it would produce if you were being chased by a predator. This inability to say no creates a predictable and painful cycle in relationships. It begins with the initial interaction, where you suppress your own preference to accommodate someone else. Perhaps you agree to a movie you dislike, or you take on a project at work when you are already drowning. In the moment, you feel a wave of relief because you have avoided potential conflict. You have secured your status as the good one. However, this relief is short-lived. As you continue to override your own reality, a sense of erasure sets in. You are physically present, but your authentic self is absent. This leads to the second phase of the cycle, which is hidden resentment. Resentment is the emotional residue of boundaries that were unspoken. When you fawn, you are often engaging in a covert contract. You are thinking, I am doing everything for you, so you should intuitively know what I need and give it to me. But because you haven't voiced your needs, the other person usually has no idea you are suffering. They take your yes at face value. This discrepancy breeds bitterness. You might find yourself thinking that others are selfish or taking advantage of you. While some people may indeed be exploitative, often the issue is that you have trained them to treat you this way. You have taught them that you have no limits. This internal anger is difficult to process because it conflicts with your identity as the nice person. So you suppress the anger, which only fuels more fawning to cover it up, locking you into a loop of exhaustion. There is also a profound loneliness that accompanies this pattern. We often believe that if we are perfectly agreeable, we will be loved. But the tragedy of the fawn response is that it prevents true connection. Intimacy requires two distinct individuals. It requires friction, difference, and honesty. If you are constantly mirroring the other person, there is no you to connect with. You become a reflection of their expectations. People may like the way you make them feel, or they may enjoy the convenience of your compliance, but they do not know you. You might be surrounded by friends and family, yet feel completely isolated because you are performing a role. You are hiding your true thoughts and feelings because you fear that if you showed your real self, including your disagreements and your needs, the relationship would crumble. It is helpful to distinguish between being good and being compliant. We often conflate the two. We grow up thinking that being a good person means never upsetting anyone. But moral goodness and blind obedience are not the same thing. True kindness is honest. If you say yes to helping a friend move house, but you are seething with anger the entire time, that is not an act of kindness. It is an act of deception. You are presenting a false reality to your friend. Authentic kindness includes being kind to yourself. It includes honoring your own limits so that when you do give, it comes from a place of generosity rather than obligation. Moving away from fawning involves redefining what it means to be a good person. It means accepting that you can be a good person and still disappoint people sometimes. Recognizing these patterns is the first step, but intellectual understanding is rarely enough to shift a nervous system response. Since fawning is a biological reaction to perceived danger, we cannot simply think our way out of it. We have to retrain the body to tolerate the discomfort of differentiation. This is a slow process. If you try to change everything overnight and start saying blunt no's to everyone, your nervous system will likely panic and send you retreating back into compliance. Instead, we look for small, safe ways to introduce friction. One practical tool for disrupting the automatic fawn response is what we can call the power of the pause. The fawn response is immediate. It bypasses the analytical part of the brain. Someone asks a favor, and the word yes is out of your mouth before you have even considered if you have the time or energy. The goal here is not to immediately say no, which might feel too terrifying, but to simply buy time. You can memorize a neutral phrase to use as a buffer. For example, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," or "I need to think about that for a moment." This pause is crucial. It interrupts the automatic neural pathway of submission. It creates a small gap between the stimulus and your response. During that gap, you can check in with your body. Does the request make your chest tight? Do you feel a sinking sensation in your stomach? These are somatic markers telling you that you actually want to decline. By buying yourself an hour or a day, you can process these feelings in safety, away from the pressure of the other person's gaze. Then, you can decide how to respond from a place of clearer intention. Even if you still decide to say yes, it becomes a choice rather than a compulsion. Another accessible practice is to experiment with low-stakes disagreements. For a recovering fawner, every disagreement feels like a life-or-death confrontation. To recalibrate this, you can practice stating a different preference in situations that have almost no consequence. If a group is deciding where to order dinner, and you normally say, "I'm happy with whatever everyone else wants," try voicing a preference. Say, "I would prefer Italian food tonight." If someone asks if you liked a movie and you didn't, try saying, "It wasn't really for me." These small assertions of self serve as exposure therapy. You state a preference, and then you observe the result. The world does not end. The other person does not abandon you. They might simply say, "Okay, let's get Italian." Over time, these small data points accumulate. Your nervous system begins to learn that having a self is safe. You learn that a difference of opinion does not equate to the severance of a relationship. It is important to start small. Do not begin by setting a massive boundary with your most difficult family member. Start with the clerk at the grocery store or a supportive friend. Build the muscle of authenticity in safe environments first. It is also important to address the guilt that arises when you start to step back from fawning. When you stop overfunctioning for others, they may react negatively. If people are used to you being endlessly available and accommodating, they might be confused or even upset when you start saying no. This pushback can trigger intense guilt. You might feel that you are being selfish or mean. In these moments, it is vital to remind yourself of the difference between causing harm and simply not taking responsibility for someone else's emotions. Declining a request is not an attack. Having a different opinion is not an insult. You are not responsible for managing the emotional reactions of other adults. If someone is disappointed because you set a boundary, that is their emotion to process. It is not a signal that you have done something wrong. The guilt you feel is actually a symptom of the old wiring trying to pull you back into the safety of compliance. It is uncomfortable, but it is not a truth teller. It is simply a growing pain. As you navigate this transition, you might find that your relationships change. Some people who only valued you for your utility may drift away. This is painful, but it is also a necessary clearing. It makes space for relationships that are based on mutual respect rather than servitude. Healthy relationships can withstand the word no. In fact, healthy relationships are strengthened by it. When you set boundaries, you are actually telling the other person that the relationship is valuable enough to be honest in. You are showing up as a whole person, which allows for a depth of connection that fawning never could. There is a concept in psychology called the tolerance of being misunderstood. For a fawner, being misunderstood is terrifying because it implies a lack of control over how one is perceived. Part of the healing journey is developing the capacity to be okay with the fact that not everyone will see you as nice all the time. Someone might think you are difficult, someone might think you are selfish, and you have to learn to be okay with that possibility. Your safety does not depend on universal approval. Your worth is not contingent on how useful you are to others. This path requires patience. You are undoing years, perhaps decades of conditioning. There will be times when you slip back into old habits, especially under stress. That is entirely normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. Notice when you are fawning. Notice the fear that drives it. And when you can, choose a small act of courage. Choose to be visible. Ultimately, overcoming the fawn response is about reclaiming your own life. It is about realizing that you exist for your own sake, not just as a supporting character in everyone else's story. It is about moving from a state of frantic survival to a state of grounded authenticity. Consider this as you move through your week. When you feel the urge to immediately agree or apologize, take a breath. Ask yourself, am I saying this because I mean it, or am I saying it because I am afraid? The answer to that question is the beginning of your freedom. What is one small area in your life where you can practice pausing before you commit?